to their own personal safety. Our meatpacking plants adapted quickly when the pandemic hit, implementing stringent public health protocols to keep their workers safe. Tragically, though, the virus did spread, and some of our workers did lose their lives. We must acknowledge that many meatpacking workers are part of Kansas's Hispanic and Latino communities that have been disproportionately affected by COVID-19. The announcement I'm making today goes a long way to closing the disparity in vaccine distribution. Today, I'm announcing my administration's new meatpacking workers vaccine plan. Much like our push to vaccinate teachers, counties with meatpacking plants will receive additional vaccine doses specifically earmarked for meatpacking workers. That will be in addition to the doses counties are already receiving from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. All meatpacking workers who want to be vaccinated can be by the end of next week. KDHE is coordinating this approach with local health departments and directly with the packing plants to ensure this process goes smoothly. I know the past year has been incredibly difficult, and especially for our high contact critical workers like our meatpackers and our communities of color. Today's announcement is another step in the right direction, just part of my administration's commitment to an efficient and equitable vaccine distribution plan. Finally, before we move on, I want to recognize our esteemed lineup of speakers. With us, we have representatives from our Hispanic and Latino communities, the meatpacking industry, and our agricultural industry. I sincerely thank each of them for all the work they've done over the past year, whether that's been keeping our food supply chain up and running or ensuring that our Hispanic and Latino communities have access to factual, timely information about COVID. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to you, Enrique, to kick off the rest of the program.
Those are great news. Thank you so much, Governor Kelly, and thank you for keeping Kansas safe. We really appreciate it. Now, I'm going to speak to Mr. Martin Rosas. He's the president of USCW Local 2. Martin, now I'll hand it over to you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Enrique. Thank you, Governor Kelly. Thank you. Really appreciate the move from the state. I want to thank the Kansas governor, local and leaders, and also want to thank National Beef and Cargill, the meatpacking plants that we represent. Local 2 represents in excess of over 10,000 workers in the state of Kansas, all across the state. And well, the pandemic was taking a hit on our plants. Our essential workers were there in front of the front lines, producing and maintaining the food supply chain flow. And this kind of recognition was needed. I appreciate on behalf of those that I represent. This is crucial and at the right path to protect those workers in the communities where these plants are located. I believe our members are going to take advantage of this. And with that, what I would like to say, because our members or workers, they're essential. I invite everyone to take advantage of this and take the vaccine to protect you, protect your family and your community. Well, this is one step forward to go back to normal. We need to continue to be vigilant about this virus until we all get vaccinated and follow the instructions of the CDC. I definitely want to recognize your effort, Governor Kelly, for what you have done for us. I also want to thank National Beef Team Klein, which is on the call, Cargill's people, also for being adamant about helping our workers and protecting those workers and try to institute good and safe protocols in those plants. So with that, I cannot thank you enough. And all I can say, muchas gracias. Thank you.
Mr. Rosas, thank you so much for your wonderful remarks. And now also with us this afternoon, we have Blanca Soto. She's a commissioner in Dodge City, Kansas. She's also a Southwest Kansas campaign director for Kansas Appleseed Center for Law and Justice Delivers. Some remarks for us this afternoon. I know her. So hey, good to see you, Blanca. Welcome.
Thank you, everyone. I am here today to represent and to lift up the voices of meatpacking workers like my father, who worked at Cargill for over 25 years. My father was the embodiment of responsibility and work ethic, but he was not the exception. He, like many others, represent the sacrifices of having an essential job. Essential employees like Liliana, most of whom are working immigrants of color, and refugees have been on the front lines of the pandemic since day one. After all of this hard work and their sacrifice, they will now have the opportunity to have the vaccine available. Thousands of our workers across Kansas that were deemed essential last year for a nation's food supply had difficult choices to make every single day, like go to work in fear of contracting and spreading COVID-19, but also, or staying home and risk losing their job and their health insurance. To me, these workers, these heroes, rose to the occasion so that the rest of us will actually keep food in our tables. Many advocates, including Kansas Appleseed, spoke up and asked Governor Kelly to prioritize meatpacking workers, and she did exactly that. For that, we are very thankful. These actions, I believe, will ensure that Kansas will continue to be a thriving, inclusive, and just state. Efforts to prioritize these vaccinations to our meatpacking workers are not only a benefit to the health and the well-being of these workers, but also to their families and our entire communities. Employees in Finney, Ford, Seward, Lyon counties, and many other communities in Kansas will rest a lot easier tonight, knowing that steps are going to be taken during these critical times to protect their health and their safety. And just to throw a little bit for those who are listening, muchos de nuestros trabajadores considerados esenciales para el suministro de alimentos en nuestro país tuvieron que tomar las decisiones difíciles durante estos tiempos de ir a trabajar con temor de contraer o propagar COVID-19 o quedarse en casa y arriesgar perder su trabajo y su seguro médico. Ellos pusieron sus vidas en riesgo para que nosotros pudiéramos tener comida en nuestras mesas. Muchos de nosotros aquí presentes hemos abogado para que se les dé prioridad a los empacadores de carne de nuestro estado, la mayoría de los cuales son refugiados o inmigrantes. Y gracias a su arduo trabajo y los muchos sacrificios, después del día de hoy, ellos tendrán la oportunidad de vacunarse. El darle prioridad a las vacunas a estos empacadores de carne no es solo un beneficio para la salud y el bienestar de todos los trabajadores en estas fábricas, pero también para sus familias y todas nuestras comunidades. Así que hoy muchas de las familias en los condados de Finney, de Ford, Seward y también de Lyon County, entre otras comunidades, van a estar más tranquilos esta noche sabiendo que se están tomando medidas para proteger su salud y su seguridad. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Enrique.
Thank you, Commissioner Soto. Also with us this afternoon, I'm honored to also know this young man. His name is Ernesto de la Rosa. He's a KLEC commissioner, also a commissioner for the Governor's Commission of Racial Equity and Justice. Welcome, Ernesto. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Enrique. Good afternoon, Governor Kelly. I'm honored to be today with you announcing the plan for vaccines for meatpacking workers. And on behalf of my fellow commissioners on the KLEC Commission and the Racial Equity and Justice Commission, thank you, Governor. Thank you, KDH&E staff for earmarking vaccines and for listening on our advocacy and recommendations for meatpacking workers. I represent Dodge City and Southwest Kansas, and as you know, we are majority Latino or Hispanic, and by far they represent majority of the meatpacking workers, and they are vital to our local economy. They are vital to our manufacturing, and therefore I can't thank you enough for earmarking vaccines. And for our meatpacking workers, gracias por su trabajo, gracias por contribuir a la comunidad y enhorabuena. Hay que tomar la oportunidad y ponernos la vacuna para así protegernos, proteger nuestra salud y proteger a nuestras familias. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Ernesto. Now with us also today, we have Monique Garcia. She's with the Kansas Health Foundation. Monique, welcome. Go ahead, ma'am. You muted, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Enrique, and Governor Kelly. Thank you so much, KDH&E and all the staff who made today's announcement possible. Cannot thank you enough for making it possible for the meatpacking workers, their families, and the health of their families to be able to continue working for the health of our state economy and national economy. We're so grateful for the commitment of the meatpacking workers who showed up every day to work on the front lines to ensure that our state and nation's food supply and economy stayed on course. By now, nearly all of us know somebody who's either been tested or exposed to the virus or tested positive for the virus. And, my family has a Mexican restaurant here in Wichita, and essential workers as well, who showed up every day after the state of Kansas made diligent efforts to safely reopen. And so, we all have personal stories. My mom and my youngest sister, who have underlying health conditions, tested positive for the virus. Thankfully, they recovered, but we all have gone on this journey together in terms of, knowing somebody who's, tested positive for the virus and such. And so thankfully for my family's Mexican restaurant, we've all pitched in to adapt to the changing business model and to help to keep the business running and provide jobs for workers. And the COVID vaccine is safe. It's for everybody, as Martin said, and it's a lifeline for business and for our economy to continue growing and work. All of us work together. As a staff person for the Kansas Health Foundation, I'm very proud to say that we focus to continue working to reduce health disparities and reach out to underserved communities such as the African American communities, the Latino communities, the disability and rural communities. And so thank you very much, Governor, and glad to be a part. Fue un placer y gracias por todo.
Thank you, Monique. Appreciate the comments. Also with us this afternoon is Mr. Tim Klein. He's the president and CEO of National Beef. Unfortunately, we're not able to get his video, but he's on the phone. Mr. Klein, how you doing, sir?
Thank you, Enrique. I appreciate this opportunity to be with Governor Kelly, Secretary Beam, and the many others represented here on this panel and throughout the state of Kansas, who are all committed to protect our most valuable asset in the meat industry, our employees. Governor Kelly, on behalf of the industry, I would like to thank you for your leadership and understanding of the important role meatpacking plays in our communities and in the food supply chain. You are the first governor to prioritize vaccines for frontline workers in the meat industry, and Kansas is among the first states to offer vaccinations to our workers on a very large scale. As we learned in April and May of last year, our operations are critical to livestock producers and other businesses up and down Kansas main streets. By providing vaccinations, we can achieve a common goal, protecting our workers and fulfilling our obligation to provide food for the American consumer. When the pandemic began, our industry rapidly adjusted processes and protocols to improve safety while managing COVID-19 cases in our plants and in our communities. We work closely with Secretary Beam and others, inviting leaders from the CDC, the Kansas Department of Health, and local authorities to tour our facilities, review our procedures, and provide their recommendations. Through these efforts and our association with the North American Meat Institute, best practices were quickly adopted across the industry. We remain committed to continuing these proven measures, but we can now turn our focus to the next tool we have in fighting this pandemic, and that's getting essential workers in the meatpacking industry vaccinated and providing them with long-term protection from COVID-19. Without it, we would have undoubtedly experienced a resurgence of the virus and the inherent disruption that it causes in our workplaces, our communities, and in our homes. We will begin vaccinations today, and by the end of next week, we will have vaccinated all employees who wish to receive it. We are very grateful to everyone involved in getting us to this point. It would not have happened without the forward thinking and leadership shown by Governor Kelly and her staff, the state and local health leaders, and UFCW Local 2, who has supported us in our efforts to both educate and encourage our workers to get the vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Also wanted to recognize the fact that today with us this afternoon, I'm honored to also introduce to everyone our Kansas Department of Agriculture Secretary, Mr. Beam. Good afternoon, sir.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you. The meat and protein supply chain crisis that we faced last spring was traumatic and costly for everyone connected to the food producing network. You know, the world quickly learned that healthy meat processing employees may be the most critical and time-sensitive link in this long food supply chain. When we faced this crisis, which reached its peak last spring there in April and May, I was struck by the appreciation and care that our meat processing leaders had for their team members who work diligently and courageously each day in their role of feeding the world a high quality and safe protein. And since the pandemic began, many of us have anxiously awaited this day, a day where our meat processing employees would have access to a vaccine that would protect them, their coworkers, and their families. And speaking of families, there are thousands of Kansas farm and ranch families whose livelihood depends on the health and welfare of the meat processing employees. They too were impacted financially when plants needed to cut back production because our meat process employees became ill or were quarantined. And I heard many times farmers and ranchers say repeatedly, I want the people who work in our plants in line well before me and my family when it's time to deliver the vaccines. I'm thrilled to be part of this announcement, and on behalf of our state's beef producers, offer a sincere thank you to the meat processing employees who we are acknowledging today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary. Ladies and gentlemen, now, as you can see, this is a very historic day for everyone involved. And I wanted to encourage, just like I'm going to repeat, some of the panelists, that it's extremely important that everyone that works on those plans, get the vaccine. And I'll tell you something else, before we leave today, because I had a very awesome experience this afternoon. It's time for us to take some questions from the press. And at this time, I'll hand it over to Reina, so she can go ahead and handle that. Go ahead, Reina.
Thanks, Enrique. All right, so if our members of the press have questions, you can virtually raise your little hand, do that hand raise feature, and I will call on you. Please, when you do, tell us who your question is addressed to. And John Hanna from the AP, he has a question here ready for us. John, you should be able to speak now.
Yes, I actually don't know who this is directed to. Maybe the governor, maybe the Secretary of Agriculture, maybe Mr. Rosas. How many workers are we talking about giving the vaccine to, and in how many counties?
Well, we will give the vaccine to all the workers who line up to get a shot. And I heard, Martine, you say you represent over 10,000. I think we've come up with about 12,000 total in the meatpacking industry across the state. So it would be both members of UCFW, but also those who are not. So about 12,000, John. And Mike, you might be better able to tell me how many different counties. I know it's 7 or 8, 10.
Yes, I think the larger plants would be in Seward, Ford, Finney, and then there'd be one in Cowley County. But there's a half a dozen or more counties that would have smaller and mid-sized who I think are on the list and will be available. And there's also a considerable number of beef processing besides these plants that will be available. So I think that 12,000 figure is probably as good as any.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is from Celia here from KCUR. Celia, you should be good to talk.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. When you announced a similar initiative for teachers, it came with kind of a timeline, a goal of when to finish vaccines for teachers. So I wonder if there's a timeline for this of how fast are you going to get vaccines out to meatpacking workers? When will this be done?
Well, I think you heard Tim Klein say that they're starting today. And the intent is to have, all meatpackers who want the vaccine to be able to be vaccinated, their prime dose, the first one, by the end of next week.
Thank you, Governor. Here, our next question is from Bianca Beltran. Bianca, you should be good to speak.
Hi, I have two questions. The first I'm wondering, is this happening on site with collaboration of the employers? And what do you want people to know about the privacy of the information that they give when they are vaccinated? Thank you.
Those are good questions. It's going to vary from area to area. There will be plants where we actually, the local public health department or contract folks will be going to the plant to actually do the vaccinations right there. In some of the smaller areas, I think that it will be arranged a little bit differently, but our local public health departments and working in concert with National Beef and Tyson, others are organizing all of that. So it is as quick and as easy and as accessible as it possibly can be for the most people.
Okay, our next question here is from KWCH. You should be allowed to speak there.
Hi, this is Sean Logging with KWCH. This question is for Governor Kelly. We have a lot of counties that are also asking to kind of move ahead some people who have serious health conditions as well. Is that something that your administration and KDHE are currently looking at right now?
Yeah, you know, the whole vaccination distribution plan is an incredibly dynamic one, you know, where we are constantly feeding in variables, you know, including how many doses are we going to get, you know, how many of phase 2 have already been finished. So we're just sort of doing the math and figuring out at what point we can start moving into essentially what will be phase 3 and the higher medical risk folks who are under 65. So that is part of the conversation, and we will announce that when the time is right. We know that there are some counties that feel like they have finished with phase 2 and are anxious to move into phase 3. We're asking them to hold back on that so that we can ensure that some of the other counties you know, are able to get through their phase 2, and we keep people sort of on the same path. If we don't do that, you know, then we're going to have these counties that move into phase 3 are going to be inundated by people from outside their counties who want to take advantage of it. So we're just trying to balance this out and keep the train running as smoothly as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you, Governor. Our next question here is from Titus at the Capital Journal. Titus, you should be good.
Hi, Governor. I'm just curious, you know, for the program for teachers, you know, I guess what percentage of teachers, you know, didn't want to get vaccinated, and with this program with meat plant workers, especially since the majority of them are, you know, Latino American and their community color tend to be more skeptical, what's the plan to get as much of these workers to say, yes, I want to get vaccinated?
Well, let me start with your second question. You know, what we're doing right now is part of our plan to ensure folks that the vaccine is safe and it's necessary and that they really need to step up and get it, not only for themselves, but for their coworkers, for their families, and for their general community. So we've been doing a lot of outreach through our Hispanic and Latino Affairs Commission. I think, Ernesto, you're on that. We are, you know, we've been working all along to communicate and ensure both the Latino community and other vulnerable populations that, and skeptical populations that, you know, this is a good thing and something that they really need to do. In terms of the percentage of teachers who have consented or not consented, I don't honestly know, but I can tell you I was down at Northeast Magnet School in Wichita today. And you could not see a more relieved, happy group of people all in one place. There were no skeptics in the audience. So I think the uptake will be very good. And I'm hoping by the communication that we're doing here that we will ensure that folks in our meatpacking plants feel very safe and very comfortable getting the vaccination.
Governor, and we have time for one more question here. We'll take it from Joe at WIBW. Joe, you should be good.
Can you hear me? All righty, perfect. Thank you. So obviously the pandemic's been going on for about a year. In April, we saw clusters in meatpacking places. Why was this, pushed back so far? Why were meatpackers not a part of phase 1 or before K through 12? What was the plan and process with that?
Well, first of all, I do want to take that question as an opportunity to give a shout out to National Beef and Tyson and others that when this all started to break loose in a crazy way last spring, the plants themselves, the management of the plants really stepped up and worked with us. Remember, we called in the SWAT team from the CDC to come into the areas and really help us figure out, help the plants figure out, what safety protocols needed to be put in place and what we could do to keep workers as safe as we possibly could. In fact, we did such a good job, they did such a good job that I believe Kansas is about the only state that didn't have to actually completely shut down production. We reduced it, but we never shut down production as they did in so many of the other states. So it was because of that quick reaction on part of everybody, CDC, the state, and the plants themselves, and the workers for going along with the protocols and adhering to them. So in terms of, if you remember the way we did phase 1, the way that phase 1 was supposed to be done according to CDC guidelines was that it was our frontline healthcare workers only who were in that phase. So, they were the ones working in the COVID wards in our hospitals, our clinics, in our prisons. And so we got them vaccinated first as we were instructed and guided to do by the CDC. Likewise, our phase 2, they call it differently. They've got a very complicated phase 1A, 1B, 1B. We just decided to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is much easier to remember. So when we moved into phase 2, it was essential workers and that included teachers, and that included the meat packers, whatever. But initially, that the authority to determine who in phase 2 would be 1, 2, 3, 4 was up to the local health departments to set that. So, we didn't come in and prioritize anybody other than sort of a generic category in phase 2 until we did the teachers, and that was 2 weeks ago. And meatpacking workers are right there too. So I don't see us as having not prioritized them as much as we did the teachers. It's just these, you've got to have the vaccines to get it done. So, and we're getting them, and now that we're getting them out to our essential workers, including our meatpackers.
Thank you, Governor. Enrique, I will kick it back to you to end the program.
Thank you so much, Raina. Thank you, Governor Kelly. Thank you to your team and to your efforts and everything you've done to keep Kansans safe. On behalf of everyone that is watching, is at some point, we're wondering about the vaccine is happening. And I'm very happy to inform as well, I'm in Liberal, Kansas. And as of 2 o'clock this afternoon, National Beef started vaccinating their employees at one of the facilities here. You can tell the happiness on some of those individuals' faces. So I am very, very, very happy to report that already is going on here in Liberal, Kansas. And I want to thank you again. Also, I want to thank the panelists, and I want to thank you all for everything you're doing to ensure that we're okay in Kansas. I want to thank you all as well. The press, thank you so much. This is all we have today. May God bless you all, and Adasta per aspera. So long.
That was Latin, not Spanish.
Nos vemos. Hasta la próxima. Gracias.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.